Yeah, I mean, they use it to cover up all sorts of crimes, and that's what they found so threatening about WikiLeaks was it was undermining their ability to cover up all of these crimes. It was revealing to the American people the actuality of the U.S. war state, and that's why WikiLeaks had to be stopped, and Assange needed to be imprisoned. And as Assange said, if lies can start wars, truth can end them. And it was an existential risk to the U.S. war machine to have the truth out there.
What is the biggest worry for somebody like me who studies international relations is, of course, that the powers that guide these beasts, or whether people are in charge of the beast, right? My big question is, do countries move independently, or are they actually controlled by a couple of people, or it's just the social interaction among everybody and the media and so on then just creates something that nobody can control? So do you think that if in the US we have this gigantic change of politicians, let's say Donald Trump comes in or RFK Jr. as next president, do you think it would change the foreign policy of the United States?
Well, Donald Trump's first term was a good example for us to learn about this. I feel like I despise Donald Trump. I think he's racist. He nearly celebrated. I mean, he celebrated the guy that nearly got me killed in Charlottesville. I was nearly hit by the terrorist driver who drove through everyone and killed one person. So I have no love for Donald Trump. He is a narcissistic, megalomaniacal, possible rapist, billionaire, pathetic human being. That being said, there are a couple of examples where Donald Trump legit tried to create peace or tried to decrease U.S. militarism. Not all in all, the Pentagon dropped 40,000 bombs when he was in office. So I'm not saying he's a peaceful guy. I'm just saying with North Korea, he tried to create peace. In Afghanistan, he said he was going to pull out the troops. In Syria, he gave the order to pull out the troops. Each time, and without exception, he was blocked in one form or another. North Korea, the peace deal was sunk. With Afghanistan, they came up with some ridiculous story that Russia was paying bounties to Taliban to kill Americans, and that therefore Trump needed to stay in Afghanistan. With Syria, it was chemical weapons that now we've seen from the 4 OPCW whistleblowers likely didn't happen. With each one, they found a way to make sure he maintained the war state at exactly the same level. And so to me, that showed that even a president trying in certain circumstances to create peace, it will not achieve it. The war state goes on. It is such inertia and it's so powerful that it goes on kind of no matter who the president is. Is it possible that there's a president that could stop that? I don't know. But I will say that I think the U.S. president is given a little too much. He or she is viewed a little too highly in the American's mind as the one and only controller of everything that goes on, when in fact you have a massive machine. I mean, the U.S. military is a $1 trillion a year, the organized mass murder machine, and the one person that kind of gets elected, I mean, we have a rigged election system, but kind of gets elected, is not generally going to change that much.
Yeah, and there is a division of power. That's one of the things that actually works in the US, I would say, that you can block a lot of executive decisions, either of course, from coming from parliament or coming from the judiciary. And that happens a lot. So that kind of answers my question. So it is a ship on a course, and we shouldn't expect this to change dramatically, even if somebody else comes in little.
I mean, another good example of the president going against that ship is JFK.
Right.
JFK, yeah, he was not always a peacenik. He endorsed Vietnam and stuff like that. But in those months before he was killed, he gave speeches about how important the Soviet Union was. He was talking to Khrushchev in back channels. He, according to the Pentagon, failed to invade Cuba after the Bay of Pigs. At each of these moments, JFK was going against the machine, against the CIA, against this massive military ship. He said the CIA should be broken up and splintered into 1,000 pieces. He fired the head of the CIA. He was decreasing their budget by 20% a year. And then several bullets go through his head. So you see what happens to someone who truthfully has that position and then stands up to the military-industrial complex. And I just want to throw in here that even Truman understood that things had gotten out of hand after JFK was killed. Truman wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post that was printed. You can still read it today. Was printed 1 month after JFK died. He did not mention JFK. He just said the CIA has gotten basically out of control, and its mission is no longer what because he signed it into creation. Its mission is no longer what was intended, and it needs to be brought to heel. And yeah, that was published a month after Kennedy died, was killed, but it was written. The handwritten notes or a week after Kennedy was killed. So who do you think Truman was referencing when he wrote that op-ed?
And we can see how the amazing thing is your congressional sessions and everything is quite open. So this is one of the beautiful things of the US process. A lot of things actually happen out in the open. And you can see how CIA and FBI directors can just refuse to answer questions coming from Congress. Just no, they just not going to answer it because national security. And Hannah Arendt, the great German-American philosopher, she once said, national security is the reason for the existence of the United States itself. It is the very essence of what the nation is, national security.
Yeah, I mean, they use it to cover up all sorts of crimes. And that's what they found so threatening about WikiLeaks, was it was undermining their ability to cover up all of these crimes. It was revealing to the American people the actuality of the U.S. war state. And that's why WikiLeaks had to be stopped and Assange needed to be imprisoned. And, as Assange said, if lies can start wars, truth can end them. And it was an existential risk to the U.S. war machine to have the truth out there.
Do you think if Donald Trump or RFK Jr. win the primaries, or if they get close to actually having a real chance at the presidency, do you think they will survive it? At the moment, they try to stop them with lawfare, but again, you could stop them also with a bullet.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time since the U.S. state has assassinated a hugely famous person that's connected, within U.S. politics. So I think it's fairly unlikely they would resort to that, but they will resort to everything else, which can really destroy a life. It can really. Who knows how many tricks they have in their book? Even if murder is not one of them right now, who knows what they would try to stop it. I mean, I have been, I think, just about the only one to talk about the fact that after Bernie nearly won the primary, 2016, a couple of years later, kind of doing it quietly, the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, added a new rule that the winner of the nomination had to be a legit Democrat. And if the head of the DNC thought that they weren't enough of a Democrat or a good enough Democrat, then they didn't need to make them the nominee. So this means that, and I think this would be the nuclear option. If RFK were to win the primary, I think the DNC would step in and say, well, that's lovely that you that you won this, but we have looked at your writings and your speakings and everything, and you're not enough of a Democrat. You're not a real Democrat. I think it's the nuclear option, because it would turn a lot of America against the Democratic Party, because they would be thwarting the so-called electoral process. But it is a nuclear option. I mean, they wouldn't have put it in there for any other reason, but to say, hey, at the end of the day, we could always just say, nope. And they also said in court, DNC lawyers also said in court that they have no obligation to have a fair primary. They're welcome to pick whoever they want. So they've tried to say it in every way they can without saying it publicly, that they will pick whoever they want to pick.
How likely do you think it is that a third party might suddenly emerge, something real, something like bigger than what the Tea Party was, or bigger than the Greens, something that could actually challenge the duopoly?
Well, and I'm not like a history professor or anything, but I do know that that third parties have, like strong third parties have been created in the past of the U.S., America's past, when a well-known candidate has left one of the main parties and created their own party or joined a third party or something, and taken all of their energy, all of that energy behind them with them. So if RFK Jr. Were to continue to get a huge group of people behind him, and then realizes that the primary is rigged and leaves for a third party or creates his third party, then I think that third party could be powerful enough. Or if Bernie Sanders had done this, a lot of people wanted Bernie Sanders to do it. If Bernie Sanders had done this, then you would have seen a very powerful, very substantial third party. That might be the only way that something like that could happen.
And maybe a last question. Does it still make sense to think of US politics for people like us who actually want to follow what's really happening? Does it still make sense to conceive it in left-right terms? Republicans on the right, Democrats on the left? Because to me, this is utterly dumb. I mean, also in Europe, it doesn't make sense anymore. All of the people who were left, anti-war, pro-worker are now on the right. And the people who used to be there, they want war, they want bombs, and they want to send more workers into the meat grinder. How do you see, what is to you the best way to conceptualize the current political spectrum in the US?
Yeah, there's absolutely no right-left paradigm in the United States in those two parties. Not at all. You have a far right fascistic right wing, and then you have a slightly less on certain social issues, slightly less fascistic right wing. So you have two right wing parties, and nowadays, even people calling themselves liberal are largely very right wing. I mean, they're pro-war in many cases. They're pro-surveillance. They're pro the diminishing of civil rights and our various rights that we have in the United States. So that is the two parties, the Democrats and Republicans. They agree on 90% of the structural issues of our country. They agree on endless war. They agree on environmental destruction, even if they don't use the words. They agree on essentially doing nothing about climate crisis. They agree on essentially the exact economic system, unfettered capitalism, destroying lives. They agree on all of that. And what they disagree on is like a sheepish, half-hearted disagreement on abortion, where the Democrats don't actually do anything to defend abortion and yet say they support a woman's right to choose. So that is the extent of disagreements. Biden, another example of the disagreements between the two sides that our media here in the U.S. will act like are pivotal disagreements, is Biden just erased a certain extent of, or is erasing a certain extent of student loan debt. But he's erasing it for 800,000 borrowers. There are something like 43 million borrowers, student loan debt in the United States, and he's erasing it for 800,000. So that's the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. 1% of student loan debt erasure. You see again and again that it is a tiny difference between these two sides, and so they're not really sides. They're one corporate party that bickers on small issues, and the U.S. populace essentially has zero say on any of it.
As a social democrat from a European country where social democracy actually kind of works, I must say, looking at the US, a lot of the discussion to me seems like the two parties disagreeing on the size of the crumbs that they want to throw to the normal people, as Jimmy Dore keeps saying. There's people under every bridge in the US, and they don't even fix the bridges anymore, right?
Yeah, 60,000. Another example of how much the Democrats do for you. Because they're the ones that care about the people. 60,000, or maybe it's 54,000 now, structurally deficient bridges across the United States that need fixing. And Kamala Harris gave a big speech a few weeks ago where she said that the Biden administration is fixing 9 of those bridges. 9.
There will probably be national celebrations for each one of them, right?
I think so. Yeah, let the confetti rain down.
Anyhow, Lee, I promised you to do 45 minutes, so this has run out. I would like to thank you very much for taking the time of discussing politics and world affairs.
I really appreciate it. And if people like what I'm saying and want to hear more of it, I have 2 podcasts, Government Secrets, and it's called The Lee Camp Show or Moment of Clarity, depending on which platform you're on, because Spotify deleted one version of it. And I also have live streams just about every weekday, so that people can find that at leecamp.com.
Send me those links. I'll put them right into the description of the video. Thank you very much, Lee, for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.